a third person perspective in the writing aspect, Logan, really kind of helped bring to light in a non-traditional way what some of the therapy things was already there. I didn't have any new epiphanies, but it really helped me lean in and think about um, trauma in general.
You're watching the Spotlight Network, starring Hollywood's newsman,
And if you were just
Logan
to
Crawford.
investigators, they now believe a single member.
He works with TV and film legends. And now, Logan's shining the spotlight on the world's top emerging authors and creators.
International were abducted.
This is Spotlight with Logan Crawford, streaming on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV.
I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're diving into a raw, real, and unforgettable memoir. It is called Sociomom, My Story of Terror, Truth, and Triumph. It is written by a terrific author by the name of Kevin Hughes. This gripping book exposes years of unimaginable abuse at the hands of a sociopathic mother, while shining light on the resilience, strength, and hope that carried one survivor beyond the pain. It's more than a story of trauma. It's a story of triumph, courage, and the unbreakable human spirit. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight. We thank the team at Prime 7 Media for helping us put him in the spotlight today. And we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing book. The links are below this interview. Kevin, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you for having me, Logan. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you on the show. This is a powerful book. It must have been painful in part to write. It must have been cathartic in parts to write. What motivated you to write it, and what was the writing process like for you?
An interesting story with that there. Wasn't it started out as an intention to write the book? I went through probably over a decade of EMDR and other therapies, processing and moving through. And around the time of COVID, worked with a friend that did some writing and things on some Zoom-like interviews to record. I just needed to maybe get it out of my head. So we started a few sessions of that, and speaking with her, she's like, Kevin, this is pretty powerful. I'd encourage you to go ahead and finish. So a quick 4.5 years later, I say kind of lightheartedly there, of working back and forth through this, was able to process through. I'd say cathartic, it kind of looking at it from a third person perspective in the writing aspect, Logan, really kind of helped bring to light in a non-traditional way what some of the therapy things was already there. I didn't have any new epiphanies, but it really helped me lean in and think about trauma in general, how mine, you don't have to have 10 years of trauma, 10 seconds of trauma can impact a person in their life, and about really started working and deepening into the book about how can we get unstuck as a civilization? So many people struggle with that. So I struggled with, do I put this out there or not? But at the end of the day, I felt like holding this to myself versus sharing it with others that you can overcome and live the life you deserve is where I landed.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's an important message for everyone, to live the life that you deserve. Sociopaths, it's a broad term, sometimes it's an overused term. Talk to us about the definition and your mother's, was she ever clinically diagnosed as being a sociopathic person?
She was. So, at a high level, at age 4, I dissociated and really forgot about all of the abuse to a certain extent until about 4.5 decades later, when I was triggered by an employee at work that was kind of found later on similar mannerisms and his style that just stirred it. So after I went through all the therapy and found myself in a spiritual life, then I found that she'd gotten herself into trouble and was going to be placed out of her home due to addiction and other things, and I had to take her on for the last 10 years of her life. During that process, she was put in in a psychiatric ward, and then we met with a geriatric psychiatrist, and that's where the DSM diagnosis came. And for people that don't know, you're right, it is overused, but that's someone that lacks empathy. So she was diagnosed as an extreme narcissism and a sociopath. And what that means is really in her world, it whatever means everything is okay. They lack empathy or understanding to know what was going on. And while that was somewhat validating later in life to understand what happened. It also put me in quite a predicament because she was at assisted living age stage, and no facility certainly wants to take on someone with, the same diagnosis as people like Ted Bundy and the like. So it's an interesting journey, but she was diagnosed for sure.
Medication help? What were those 10 years like when she was living with you? Obviously, you had a troubled history.
Yeah, so I'd set her up in, initially in those in different facilities. Finally, found a family-run place that in a very rural area that took her in the assisted living. So I was more of a, I couldn't bring myself to actually have her live with me after all of that. I was still processing a lot up until the very end. Her last breaths were, I was a perfect mother and everybody loves me. So she never acknowledged where she was, but it was quite a journey of, there was, she was an equal opportunity offender to all encountered there. So in the one moment, she could have someone become their best friend and do whatever she wanted, manipulate them. And in the next minute, she could slice and dice with metaphorically with her words and actions. And I would be getting calls to come, deal with her and things. So medications for like Haldol and things like that. There is no traditional medication for someone with sociopath. There's no cure or anything for that. It's just one of those few mental health illnesses that there's not a lot you can do. But we worked with the facilities and medication to kind of keep her from getting elevated.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's not like schizophrenia where there are treatments that suppress it. Like you said, the treatments for sociopaths would likely be something to keep her from getting agitated and so forth. You view this as a good versus evil underdog story. Tell us about that.
Well, when you think about in society, Logan, the first person that any child, looks up to as someone is supposed to nurture and take care of it. Mother comes to mind, of course, father as well, but mom would come number one as they carried you and gave birth to you. And, that person was a sociopath that memories as far back, in EMDR things before I could even be in spoke of abuse. So, literally, up until age 4, tortures and things that I've just kind of dissociated and existed through the next decade or so of abuse till I got out of it. So, really started off without any nurturing of a parent, living in horrific abuse of physical, mental, sexual abuse, starvation and all the other things, taken out munch housing to doctors as I got older. She would, go tell them I needed procedures, etc. And so really overcoming that, and I kind of went through my early adult life really just kind of plowing through and just kind of running away from it, not realizing that. I had a successful career, but I never really was emotionally integrated to the level I thought I would be. I was kind of mirroring society. So the underdog in good versus evil, as I went through all of that, remembered all of that with the work incident, spent a decade on and off working through, recovery, but still, I like to say God has a sense of humor. As I found my health mentally and spiritually, got that phone call that here's mom, and you're going to have to find some way to deal with and be her primary caregiver for the balance of her life. So really, in that latter part of the book, it's the chess game of how to kind of stay a step ahead of an adult sociopath that has gotten their ways at any means their entire life and still thinks that they're in control. So there's a lot of twists and turns and overcoming that, but trying to overcome that without grace. A lot of people ask me, I wouldn't deal with her. How would you? Well, I had a pastor once that told me, Logan, that, she didn't fulfill the mother role. So you don't have to fulfill society's, traditional son role. But what if you were to walk down the street and find someone that's fallen on the curb there? Would you walk to the other side of the street and step around them, or would you lend a hand? That's the kind of thing. So I tried to take that approach, and it's documented in the book. It's obviously easier to say than do, and it had a lot of twists and turns in the books that I won't kind of go too deeply into. But in the end, being able to come from a survivor to a thriver, regardless of whatever your background, your circumstances of your past, your current, the main good versus evil, and what I'm trying to convey in the book is you can overcome anything if you try different and better. Too many of us get stuck trying the same thing and hoping for different results in life, and that's just not sustainable.
Yeah, yeah. It's a matter of reprogramming your brain, rewriting the scripts that were written for you when you were younger, if you're going to survive and thrive after experiencing the kind of pain that you experienced. When did you realize that you need to seek help, you need to seek therapy? You know, your trauma had been undiagnosed and untreated for a while, right?
Yes, it was. I did and ran to the Navy after high school, and they had some things where as I tried to get out of the Navy, they had some things. But as a kid, you're like, okay, whatever. I just want to get, out and move on. I didn't want to go spend 6 years on a submarine I knew I had different things, but I didn't know to what level. So I pressed on through life, and even when the work incident that precipitated that where I was having some conflict with the coworker, which I'd never had any, but it's just something visceral that was causing me that. I still approach therapy as I'm going to beat it, I'm going to win, and just move on back in my career and do whatever. But it wasn't until I truly the first EMDR session after about a year or two with therapy where we tried something different, where EMDR is where your subconscious mind suppresses things and it works to kind of help you bypass that a little bit while you go through traditional therapy.
Mm.
That was a visceral moment. I went right back to that childhood room. I could see, feel, and be in that room. And that's when all of this really uncovered. And I realized that this wasn't just something that I needed to overcome and get back to my work career path, that I had some significant things to address. So I would say that was probably about 17 years ago, probably in the late 2008 or nine, something in that range.
Amazing, amazing. Um, Talk to us about having perhaps what you might call the stigma of a socio-mom. How did you not let that define you? How did you break free from the bad patterns that she had set for you in life?
Yeah, that it's really and as you read the book, I kind of very raw. I speak to that. It wasn't some sort of wave a magic wand to die moment. It's a journey, even to this day, and not a destination. I vacillated back and forth, even up to the bitter end in the hospital room with her, with struggling with that and the stigma of that. But it really is society, it's your mother, it's your father, and it doesn't matter what your background is. Everybody, the holidays and things, people think that. So the stigma of that really I struggled with, and I would just kind of stick and move and kind of stay to myself and kind of try to mirror through society, and blend in. But not until I really got deeper into this work where I was able to realize that it wasn't my cross to bear, so to speak, on and speaking freely. And even up until the time of deciding to publish in this book, Logan, I really vacillated back and forth. Do I really want as an adult male to put all my stuff out on the street for the world to see? But I realized that in other different scales and iterations, everybody has stuff, but most people are programmed to kind of push it down. So to answer your main question, I kind of pushed down and plowed through. I kind of in the book nicknamed myself like the Terminator from the movie, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the cyborg. I kind of just plowed through. I've learned to integrate with therapy and come back through that, but the stigmas and the things I battle with, even though slightly up to this day, talking about that, it's
Yeah.
something that's a journey and not a destination to arrive at.
Yeah. And I think if people were honest with themselves, I mean, I think most people have survived some level of abuse. I think that, for some people it's much, much worse, of course. And for other people it's minor, but it's still impactful on their lives. So let me ask you this. What do you hope survivors of abuse will take away from your book?
The main thing, there's a couple, but the main thing is that regardless of your circumstances, what's happened to you, how long ago, how long it was, you can overcome and thrive, but you have to embrace and try different and better. Number one, you can't do it on your own. I tried for that and plowed through and almost lost it all, as you'll read in the book about there. That doesn't is not sustainable. Number two, mental health is health. It's not a stigma. We've all encountered someone that we've seen their arm in a sling or they have a leg brace on or something like that. And our initial human response is, oh my gosh, what happened? How can I help you? Can I bring you over a meal, et cetera, et cetera? Is there's a lot of hidden things that sometimes somebody may not be quite like you think. And instead of judging that and say, oh, that's just Kevin, he's maybe that way, ask that other question and look for that hidden arm sling or leg brace. As a society, just someone recognizing and asking the question could be the tipping point to help validate that person to get them unstuck. But if you're personally overcoming this, you got to lean into mental health and spiritual health as well. And whatever that means for you, I'm not here as a professional to dictate that to you, but you have to try different and better if you want different and better results. Too many people self-medicate through life, whether it's through food, addiction of alcohol and drugs, that go to their doctor to be, with depression or anxiety that's really not based on something that's not really right. And then they have other problems come from that. So you've got to talk about it with someone and start somewhere. Those would be the two main messages I'd say, Logan.
They're very, very important messages, particularly in this era where you see a lot of people self-medicating with recreational drugs and alcohol and other vices as well, and then living with the pain that impacts their relationships, impacts their job, impacts their children, and it can be generational if you don't break that cycle of abuse and heal from the pain that is within you from suffering that trauma. The name of the book we've been talking about today is called Sociomom. It is a haunting yet uplifting reminder that no matter how dark the past may be, there is always a path forward, a path toward healing, resilience, and triumph. Kevin, thank you so much for joining me here today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, Logan.
I appreciate your work on this book and your candor in coming forth and talking with me today about this very, very important subject, which, as I mentioned before, I think really affects untold numbers of people. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.